What does it mean to walk our talk? We give power to our own words when we act on them. If we're given the idea or the inspiration and we don't bother to validate them, then why should anybody else? Have you ever met someone that said, I'm only an idea person? Does that really work for you? Doesn't work for me. It's like if your ideas aren't good enough for you, why are you telling me about them? So you've got to get the two things moving together. God, I love this, God supplies the breeze, but to actually use it, we must hoist the sail. And I love that little visual that you can put with that, because we're always getting, I had a friend that always calls it divine taps on our shoulder. But do we listen? Do we react? I always say if your walk and your talk don't match, you either have got to walk more or talk less. The choice is yours. Take a moment and reflect on the phrase, I am not to blame for my life. I am only responsible. And sometimes we get the two confused, don't we? Does the phrase make you feel good? I mean, somehow when you shift that into being I'm responsible instead of to blame, blame shuts things down. But responsible, for me at least, it opens it up. Is it a phrase that confuses you? There is a big difference between blame and responsibility. We seem to have a practice in this country. Let's find who we can blame so we can make them responsible and let them take the heat. And we see this all the time. It's practiced over and over in the media and in the courts, and we also see it in our government. And finally it gets to the point, for a while I've shut off the news. I just didn't want to buy into all the drama anymore. I wanted to make the choice to actually feel good. Now I'll watch it for maybe 2 or 3 minutes, just kind of get the headlines of what's going on. But the blame game really just drains me. And I thought, I want to be responsible for how I feel and not get into all this drama. And sometimes the drama is so unnecessary. It's like if we don't have a good news days, let's see what we can create, and maybe we can blame somebody. And I was like, let's just get over it. There must be someone somewhere who knew about whatever, so we can blame them for not taking action. And my thought goes back, well then why didn't you? It's no wonder that we cringe with the spiritual principle. We co-create our lives with God. We co-create our lives with God. The key to understanding this, though, is the root word about responsibility, and that's respond. Our ability to respond. We are responsible for our responses to an experience, event, or a condition. So it comes back to how do we perceive whatever is going on. For instance, for me, I just found myself emotionally being drained by the news, so I made a choice to choose something else to watch where I would feel better, especially when I go to sleep at night. And so I wanted to really check in with my emotional feelings and my emotional temperature, shall we say, and make a choice as to how I want to feel at the end of the day, how I want to go to sleep, rather than get into the latest horrific thing that's going on or the great newest scandal that's happening. It just gets old, and as I said, it drains me. Our perception determines the meaning of any experience and what we give to it. We are responsible to give each experience meaning in our lives, and some we do, and we also have the choice to give it no meaning as well. When we look at each experience that we attract to us, can we look at it as part of our soul revealing itself to the world? Then even the so-called bad stuff may be the best stuff that's going to reveal our wholeness. So I know some people would have, maybe you have trouble with this, have we co-created everything that's happened to us? It's every little thing, like maybe a car accident. It wasn't your fault, but you pulled it into your life. Are you to blame for that, or did you co-create that? We have a lot of experiences that maybe we would look at as, I wish I didn't have to go through this. And what it really is doing is calling forth in us our response ability. Do we want to respond to the situation in love? Do we want to respond to the situation in peace? Do we want to respond to the situation from a spiritual knowing? Or do we want to go do drama? I've told many times the story when I was first diagnosed with cancer. This is over 15 years ago. And I remember I thought, how am I going to handle this? Because my husband and I were both into high drama. And what we did was we contacted 3 people that would hold the high watch. And we told them, we plan to join you. We're going to go do drama for a little while. We're going to cry, and we're going to feel sorry for ourselves, and we're going to go into our stuff. But the point is that we're going to join you in holding the high watch. We don't need anybody to join us in the drama. And it worked. It worked because we knew we had these people praying for us. And we were able to go through, and that just says, don't let go, don't shove your emotions down and not respond to them. I knew I had all this stuff going on to me, and I was plain scared at the time. And you need to deal with those emotions, but you don't have to set up a tent and live there. It's just something you're going to be passing through. And so my response to a rather critical situation was, let's know we're going to move through this. We're going to wrap our minds and our emotions around this. But we're going to do a little drama first. And that was okay. And then we moved on through it. And that was our response ability. In this topic, a whole new you, Myrtle Fillmore said, the power that created you is always at work to restore you to and to maintain you in wholeness. Let me say that again. The power that created you is always at work to restore you to and to maintain you in wholeness. What are we talking about when we refer to being whole? That's with a W. W-H-O-L-E. We are all here on this planet for one main reason: to live our lives from a divine source. To live our lives from a divine source. To be healthy, to be happy, to be prosperous people living from our divine connection with God. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. We've heard that before. Our wholeness is keeping ourselves attuned to our spiritual nature, not our physical one. And the physical experience is to help us keep connecting with Spirit. To keep connecting with Spirit. And I know that in the physical world, it seems more real than the spiritual world so often, doesn't it? And we look at the things that we worry about, that we obsess over perhaps, that constantly are nagging at us, and we just that seems to get our full attention. And it's to step back from all that and just realize, okay, God, how am I supposed to deal with this? How am I supposed to express from my spiritual nature instead of my human nature? Maybe that's why we come to church. Or at least once a week we remind ourselves the reality of our existence, that we are spiritual. That we are spiritual beings. The rest is just life. But life can get too real sometimes, and I know that. We find ourselves sick, or we find ourselves hurting. Someone in our life dies, perhaps we lose a job. Hunger can be more real than spirituality if you've ever been hungry. So when we say we co-create our lives with God, does that mean that everything is God in action, helping us to reveal our spiritual nature? If you choose to let it be, yes. Yes. We are not responsible for everything that happens to us. We're only responsible for our responsibility to everything that happens to us. I know many of us, in trying to respond to the situation, now I know no one here, we're all enlightened beings, aren't we? Did you ever go out and try to fix the other person? Or fix the situation? No. We've all tried that. If they would just change, I wouldn't have to deal with it, right? Anybody go there? If they were just different, I wouldn't have to feel so uncomfortable. Well, guess what? They are the gift in our lives, because whatever is making you uncomfortable is something that we're needing to heal, needing to look at, needing to address. That's the spiritual gift in these situations. I had a girlfriend that worked for a company that absolutely could not stand her boss. This lady just drove her crazy. So she went out and she looked for another job, and she found a lady that she just loved this boss. She said, this is a lady I really want to work for. So she switched jobs. 3 months after working for the new company, that boss got a promotion. And they put a new boss in. And guess who that new boss was? Fortunately, she got the memo. She said that whatever this person is doing to push all my buttons is in me. And it's something that I need to heal. And boy, what a realization. So she said, I need to learn how to make peace with all of this. And I thought, well, how did you do it? She said, it wasn't easy. But I did. I did. And that's coming from a spiritual solution to a human experience. So our job is to live spiritually, to use all the spiritual tools we have at our disposal in our lives. That's what we learn in classes like Essential Spirituality, all the classes that we teach here. We're learning the tools to help us deal with life and to bring our spiritual nature forward. I just love the saying, life doesn't make the person, it reveals them. And that's what we're here working toward, is how can I reveal that spiritual nature that truly is me? These spiritual tools that we teach are very powerful. I know, have you ever had a situation, and we call it spiritual malpractice, don't we? If someone would come up and say, well, what did you do to create that? My husband always said he just wanted to stomp him on the toe and said, well, what did you do to create that? That's holding spirituality by the tail instead of by the head. And we always have the great advice for everybody else on how to fix their lives. But remember, we're here for, I love the saying in there, it's an inside job. It's for what we are here to do. These spiritual tools are very powerful, and our connection with God is very powerful. But it's useless unless we act on it. The letter of James in the New Testament states so beautifully, faith without works is dead. A desire without a deed is a dead end. If we don't bother to validate ourselves from our own connection with God, why would we expect somebody else to? That's one of the things I think I did as a minister up in Gainesville, is I really kind of got around to every single department just to see how everything worked. Just so as if I was going to be the senior minister, I at least wanted to have an understanding of what everybody was going through when they were volunteering for the bookstore, they were volunteering for the sound team. Just so I had an experience of that I wasn't asking anything of anybody else that I didn't know something about myself. And I really was appreciative of that. I remember one Sunday morning we didn't have anybody in the sound booth, so I did the whole service from the sound booth that morning. And everybody offered. I said, no, this is okay, but we do need more volunteers in the sound booth. But it was kind of fun, and it was really kind of interesting to do everything from seeing everybody's back instead of everybody's front. But at least it was something, as a manager, I always thought, I need to be aware of what's going on, the things people are having to deal with, so I can be supportive. Are you that way, that when you're working with people, you want to know what they're doing? How can I support you? How can I be there to understand where you're coming from with this? It's validating what we find important and supporting others as they validate themselves. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this, but you know Reverends Joel and Marianne Blackford, who used to be over at Unity Kennesaw years ago, they created, they have a book that goes along with cards that you draw, and it's called Inner Voice Cards. And one is an empowering voice, and the other is a limiting voice. And we have an ability to choose, do we want to be empowered by this situation, or do we want to be limited and feel like we're a victim? If we truly believe that God is working through every situation that we pull into our lives, then we realize that all things are possible. That we have that choice to be empowered, or we have the choice to be limited by the experience. How do you think about it? Do you think of yourself as a victim? Why is this happening to me again? Why is this happening to me again is because I haven't learned the lesson. I haven't stepped up to the plate and realized there's something in me that needs to be healed. When we respond from our empowering voice, we create an empowering world because we empower not only ourselves, but we're able to empower other people. When we act from our empowered voice, we feel great, and often we feel that connection with God. When we act from our limited voice, either nothing gets accomplished, or we end up creating more drama so nothing gets accomplished. Sometimes I think we have people that are drama junkies, that if there isn't a drama, they're going to create one. Not that we know anybody like that, right? But drama is so unnecessary. In fact, I've even seen people that going through some of the most horrific situations are so calm and so peaceful and so centered that what really sounds like a drama from their perspective is not one. And I marvel at people. We saw Mahatma Gandhi talking about how to be happy when your mind and your thoughts and your heart and your actions are all in line, how you can be happy. And look what this simple man did that is still having an effect on the world. Just teaching us how to live in that authentic realm, that our minds, our hearts, and our actions are all in alignment. What surprises me is that often when I see people and I know people are going through challenges, that I don't see them come to church. And this is something that's always amazed me, because this is nothing new. I saw this when I was at Unity North. I saw this when I was at Unity of Gainesville. That people that were going through the greatest challenges in their lives stopped coming to church. And to me, that's just backwards. If they were afraid that they were going to show up, that they were doing New Thought wrong. Go figure. That they were somehow, if there were something really bad's happening, and I know back when I had the original diagnosis of cancer, and I finally started telling people that I was going through cancer, I had one lady said, well, I wouldn't tell anybody about it. I said, why? She said, well, you're doing New Thought wrong if you're sick. Well, guess what? Myrtle Fillmore, the founder of Unity, was sick. She had tuberculosis. And I thought, isn't that sad that somehow you've got to put on this facade, this image, that everything is perfect in our lives. So I'm not even saying that when things do happen that are drama-worthy, and they are, this is when we can get our support. We can get our people here to hold the high watch so we can join them. And it's not saying that we have to cover up everything so that, everything is always going well. Heaven, the last 2 years of my life has not been the easiest ones, but I made it through with a lot of good support from you all here. But it's still, we go through the tough times. But it's also knowing that we can also come out the other side of that. And that's that wholeness of being that is innate in all of us. That God is working, even through the toughest situations, allowing us to move through that, feeling support of those holding the high watch for us, and knowing that we'll get to the other side of it. So, if you can help and support people, and just say, I will pray for you, I will support you, I will love you, I will hold that you're going to work through this, and not do the drama. What a gift that is. What a gift that is. Life is here to give us the opportunity to use every principle you've learned in every class. To be the wholeness of spiritual beings that we are. Every spiritual principle that we've learned, you will use at some point. I know when we were talking to Mel and I went to a minister's luncheon of interfaith ministers in Cobb County, which was really interesting. And we were talking about faith. And it's all how, through our different traditions, how faith comes into play. And I loved hearing the sharing, people coming from the different perspectives, everything from the Quran to the Bible, and how their faith works for them, and how they feel that divine connection with God. And to hear it from other people who, many are going by text and by spiritual principles that I've never heard of, because it's a different journey. But they've all wound up in that same connection with God. And it makes me think that God is so much more than I've ever realized. I know this aspect, working with the Bible and being a follower of Jesus and coming from the Christian tradition, that is just one way, but there is so much more that these other faith traditions are teaching that I realize that God is so much bigger than I could imagine. But everyone finds their way to that connection. You've heard the saying, before enlightenment, chop wood and carry water, and after enlightenment, chop wood and carry water. The human experience is always here for us, but we are these whole spiritual beings, and we are here revealing ourselves at every moment. So if you get that divine tap on your shoulder, what are you going to do about it? If you get that divine inspiration. Now, that doesn't mean that you might not go to someone who's also interested in the same thing, or supporting someone who has a similar interest and say, how can I support you because I got this idea, but I want to help be part of that. It can be a big help to people. So I'm not saying if you get a divine idea, do share it, but don't just drop it there and wait for somebody else to pick it up. Be part of it. That's part of expressing the wholeness and the spiritual being that is you. We all have the ability to either be the empowering voice or the limiting voice in our lives. The choice is for you. In closing, I've got a story I want to share from, this is Robert Brummett's book, The Quest for Wholeness. He was one of my teachers back at Unity Village, and one of my favorite teachers, and he's written a lot of books about transitions and about making changes in your life. But this is his book, The Quest for Wholeness. He said, once upon a time, there lived a very wise sage. His home was, of course, a temple in the Himalayas. His wisdom was renowned. Tales of his great wisdom had spread throughout the land. It was even said that there was no question he could not answer correctly. Upon hearing this, a very wily young lad from a nearby village requested an audience with the sage. He was granted his request, and he stood before the sage. He held his hands behind his back and put forth his question. "O great sage, I'm holding a bird behind me. Is this bird I'm holding alive or dead?" The bird was actually alive. If the sage responded dead, the lad would simply produce the living bird and prove him wrong. If the sage responded alive, the clever and ruthless lad would wring the bird's neck and produce a dead bird. The boy stood with a smug smile on his face, waiting for the sage to reply. The wise man closed his eyes for several seconds. Then a charitable smile appeared on his face. He opened his eyes and replied gleefully, "Son, the answer to that question lies in your hands." So how do you express a whole new you by walking your own talk this year? Just as the wise man said, the answer lies in your hands.